this video, I'll be showing you how to make this tote that I designed for the Featherweight. I designed it so that it opens on both sides, and it has a magnetic snap, and then you can open the top up and insert your machine in there or remove it. This fits the machine exactly. The first thing I'll do is print the pattern, and I'm going to print pages 2 to 12. I'm not going to print this first page. That's just the what the pattern is going to look like when it's together. Make sure that you're printing it at actual size or 100%. The next step is to assemble the pattern. To assemble the pattern, I just cut the edge on one piece at a time. You're going to match the corners and the red lines, and then place it on top. And this is easier than cutting both sides and trying to match them. And then what I do is I tape. Another option to cut your pattern out is, if you don't want to cut the pieces like this, you can do it by measurements. And if you're cutting by measurements only, these are the only 2 pattern pieces that you would need. So the supplies for the bag are listed on the first page. The next step, after the pattern pieces are all cut, is the preparation of the fabric and the cutting. And I took the piece A, the flap. I wanted this piece to be quilted, so I pre-quilted it with the foam. And then for my lining, I attached the SF-101, the stabilizer, and then I cut the piece. So it's going to be one piece of A, which is the zipper flap, and I keep the pattern pieces together until I'm ready to sew them. And then for the front, I'm not quilting it, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the foam to the main fabric using 1/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way around. And then I cut my lining as well. Panel C, which is the bottom, the same thing. The top fabric or the main fabric, the foam, and the stabilized lining. And I have my pattern piece D, which is the front panel, the same thing, same number of pieces. And then the sides, there's going to be 2 of the main, 2 for the foam, and 2 for the lining. So that'll be 1 on each side. Now that all the cutting is done, we're going to start to the actual construction steps. And the first step is to make the zippers. And I'm using zipper tape. So I'm cutting the zipper at 12 inches. And I'm just burning the edges here just to, so it doesn't unravel. Cut it nice and straight. So I'm going to cut it at 12 inches exactly. And we're going to make 2 of these. I'm using zipper tape. You can use a pre-made zipper, but you would have to cut off the ends, or at least the bottom end. So I'm going to add my zipper pull. Okay, so the end that's going to be open, we're going to fold it at a 90-degree angle. Like this. And I'm just going to clip it for now. Do the same thing for the other side. And once you have it folded, you're going to make a seam. Just sew the little end there. You can hand sew it or machine sew it. I'll show you this one. This is one's already made. So sew it right here and right here. So this will prevent the zipper from coming off. And you're going to end up with about 11.5-inch zipper after that. Okay, next we're going to take panel A, the outside, and align the zipper. All our seams are going to be 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So if you cut your zipper longer, make sure that it doesn't go into this seam right here. So we're going to place our zipper with the open side down towards the curve, right sides together. Place it on the edge. And then put some clips on it to hold it in place. Make sure you're matching the edges here. And then do the same for the other side. Zipper, right side facing the right side of the fabric, and clip in place. And then I'm going to go to the machine and I'm going to baste at about 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch right along this edge and this edge. Now that the zippers are basted to the sides, we're going to take the lining and right sides together, clip it in place all the way around, leaving this edge open. And at this point, the zipper pulls are going to be in the way when I'm sewing this. So I'm just going to go ahead and take this end off. And then I'll add it on later. It'll just be easier to sew this. Another alternative, if you don't want to do that, what I just did, you can make sure that you open your zipper at least this much so that it's easier for you to move the zipper pull out of the way while you're sewing. And just to make it easy on myself to get an accurate seam, first I'm going to baste at 1/8 of an inch all the way around, 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch, and then I'm going to do my seam, my 3/8 of an inch seam all the way around. Now I'm going to clip the corners here. And I'm just going to clip here at the curve edges. And then on this seam, you can trim it a little bit. Just so it curves nicely when you flip it around. Definitely do not trim the sides because your zipper is in there and you don't want to trim your zipper. Now I'm going to turn this around. You can also do like a little 45-degree angle at the top here. Then I'm going to turn it right side out. And I'm going to attach my zippers again. Make sure I don't forget. Now that the zipper is connected, make sure that it opens towards the bottom. I'm going to baste this end closed, and I'm going to top stitch all the way around like this. And you can also press the lining if it looks a little wrinkled. I clipped along the top to make sure that my seams are aligned. And I also clipped this around the bottom to make sure that my lining doesn't roll out to the outside while I'm top stitching. If you're using the sew-in foam like I'm using, take all the front panels, all the exterior panels, and baste them at 1/8 of an inch all the way around. Now we're going to take our back panel and right sides together, baste it at 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch along this edge. I basted the front to the flap, and now I'm going to attach the lining, the back lining, right sides together in the back at the 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I'll clip here and then I'll sew. Now that your seam is completed, flip the back and finger press it, make sure that it's nice and flat, and flip the front up as well. But before that, I'm going to clip my corner here, and that's just going to prevent a lot of bulk in the seam when I sew this seam down later. And you can do that for all your edges like that. Then we're gonna clip the lining, and you have to be careful because make sure that they match, the front and the back match, and clip them. So I'm gonna clip it all the way around, and I'm gonna baste along the raw edges and then top stitch along this edge. Okay, now the back is attached to the flap, the front flap, and it's basted along the edges, and I top stitched it. Now I'll take panel C, and with right sides together, if you're using directional fabric, make sure that the fabrics are facing the correct way. For example, this is the back, so it should be facing up if you have a directional pattern. With this one, it doesn't matter because it's not directional. So attach your panel C to the back panel the same way that we attach this here. And first, I'm going to baste this edge. Make sure you match the edges. If the foam sticks out a little bit, go with the edge of the fabric, not the foam. So I'm gonna baste this at 1/8 of an inch. And then I'm gonna come back after I baste it and put my lining right side to right side and sew it at the correct seam allowance. So far we have the flap, the back, and this is gonna be the bottom. So now the bottom, I'm not going to baste it along the bottom, down along the raw edges, but this time I'm just gonna clip the raw edges together to hold them in place. But I'm not gonna baste. So now what I'll do is I'll top stitch along the base of the bottom panel right here on this seam. Now that I did my top stitching along this line, I'm gonna put this aside for now. Now we're gonna work on our front panel. And then the next step that we're gonna do is with right sides together, we're gonna sew the 3/8 of an inch seam allowance along this curve. And then I'm gonna sew along this edge only. Now I sewed this seam here, and I'm going to clip it around the curves. And then you can trim your seam allowance here in the corner. And you can trim it a little bit on the top if you'd like. I like to clip first before I trim. Or snip. Okay, now we're gonna turn this around, right side out. And I'm just gonna add some clips to hold the lining down like that. You can press it as well. And then we're gonna hold the edges together again with clips all the way around. Making sure that you're matching the fabric edges. So now I'm going to baste all the way around the raw edges and top stitch along the top edge. Now my front panel is top stitched. I kind of didn't do a good job right there, but that's going to be covered by the flap anyway. And now take your panel again, then remove all these because we don't want to catch the lining. So fold the lining back so it's not caught between these two panels, and attach the front panel to the base. Again, making sure that your lining is free. And we're gonna sew along this edge. So now that the front panel is attached to the back, the lining is free. And this lining is going to form the lining for here to cover this seam. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to hand baste it in place so it doesn't shift on me. And then after I baste it at the very edge, I'm going to top stitch along the front of the base panel so that it catches this lining. And I did a seam, a 3/8 of an inch seam, basted seam here, so that I can fold this easily. Or you can fold it with the iron, whatever is easier for you. Okay, now I ended up machine basting this seam right along the very edge. I removed the stitches, and then I top stitch. Make sure you top stitch, like I said, along the bottom panel so it folds really nicely. And now your sides are open here in between. So here's where you can insert the little panel here, a stiff panel to stiffen up this the base. You can insert it in here, or you can just make one and put it in the bag later. I prefer to put it in the bag rather than to insert it in there because it's gonna be harder for me to sew the sides. But if you do put a panel in there, put it in and then baste the sides closed. And if you're not gonna put the panel in there, baste the sides closed anyway. Now we're gonna get ready to build the straps. And you take your webbing material and attach it end to end into a loop, making sure it's not twisted. And I'm going to apply a clip here, and then I'm going to make a square, sew a square with an X to make it nice and strong, and then you'll have a loop. So now once you've made your loop, find the center of the bottom panel. I just fold it in half and I'm going to mark it with a pin. Do that on both sides. Now we're going to fold the belt loop in half and mark each center point. I'm marking it with a pin. And make sure you include the part where you did the seam towards the bottom, so that it's at the bottom and it's not anywhere else on the bag. And then I'm going to mark with a chalk where I'm going to place the edge I'm going to do that for each side. And I'm going to start attaching the webbing, making sure it's not twisted against that edge right there that I just marked and against the center so that they're even. I use double-sided tape. Let's see if this works. Okay, that seems to work, so I'm gonna do the tape it until the top, and make sure that you fold it here so that it has a little bit of ease when you're sewing it down. Like don't pull on this and stretch it. And then making the loop, I'm gonna keep attaching it. And over here in the front, make sure that you don't attach more than, like, make your mark where you're gonna do your square, because the flap will be over this. When you're sewing it, I recommend that first sew it at the base, which is this panel from the front. So I sew it here, and then before I just make a box right here or a rectangle, attach it, and then fold it a little bit so that that ease right here is taken up and it doesn't bunch up your front. And I do the same thing for the back. Let me just explain how I sewed the straps to make sure that they're not stiff. You can't sew them straight across like this. So the first thing I did was sew the bottom, sew them on the bottom panel. I just made a rectangle here and a rectangle here. And then to sew the back, I folded it over just to make sure that there's some ease here, otherwise it'll get bunched up. And then I attached it starting from here and make my rectangle going from the top to the bottom where the seam is. See how when you fold it, this goes around, but when you have it straight, there's kind of a little loop there. And that loop is the ease so that you can fold it nicely. And then for the front, do the same thing. This one's already attached, so make sure you fold it. You can fold it all the way, especially if you're using the foam, because the foam gives it a lot of bulk. And then pin it again, adjust it to make sure that you're sewing your rectangle starting from the top, and make sure you leave that little ease, that little loop on there open so that you can fold it easy. And this is what it looks like in the back. Just the little rectangles. I don't know if you can see it, the thread is the same. Okay, so now we're gonna get ready to do our sides. And to do the sides, we're gonna take, this is a little bit backwards. We're gonna take the outer fabric and the lining, wrong sides together, baste them together all the way around. And do that for both panels. And now we're getting ready to fix our sides. So mark your centers of your side panels. using whatever method you prefer. And then take the rest of your body panel and find the bottom panel, which is this one, and mark the center again if you lost your mark that you did before. Do that on both sides. Now we're going to take our center points and place your one of your side panels matching the centers and clip them. And we're going to sew across, but not all the way to the end. You're going to leave 3/8 of an inch. Start 3/8 of an inch away from this edge, and then go to the other side and stop at 3/8 of an inch away from that. Do that the same thing for the other side. Another way to know where to stop and start your seam is that you want to make sure that you stop your seam right where the seam ends. For the bottom panel, the seam between the bottom panel, the front panel, and the bottom panel and the back panel. That's another way of doing it, because that's going to be our pivot point for this square. So let me go ahead and do that, and then we'll finish the rest. So now, to connect the sides, what we're going to do is make a snip right here, a little bit less than 3/8 of an inch. Almost towards the seam here, but not making sure that you don't go into the seam. And you're going to cut between, I don't know if you can see it, but right here, right where the corner is. And that'll allow you to pivot and this is what it's going to look like. And then start pinning, clipping. Making sure you're matching your edges together. And I start on one side. I'm leaving the flat part to last. I'll do the same thing for this one. It's right where the seam is. Make sure you don't go too far. And pivot that to form your corner. And make sure you don't pull it up like that, you know, make sure you just put it exactly where the curve is going to be. And we're gonna keep clipping all the way around. This time we're gonna catch the zipper as well. And it's a nice soft curve, so you should be able to ease your zipper on. Without having to clip into it. It's not a good idea to clip into the zipper tape because it can unravel. So what I do is, as I'm clipping, I sort of ease it into the curve. And then this is the part that gets tricky because we want to make sure that the flap goes under, that you don't do the flap towards the inside. So you have to make sure that it goes under the front. And it's going to overlap. The front is going to overlap on the zipper, if that makes sense. Use a lot of clips. And then here, overlap the front. And pin it all together, or clip it all together. And then I'm gonna do this one first. What I'll do is I'll sew all the way around. First I'm going to baste it, and then I'll sew my 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And for this, when you're sewing, put the flat part towards the bed of the machine, and it'll be easier because you'll keep an eye on your tape and then just go along the curves, moving this part, bunching it up like this. It's a little bit of a struggle, especially if you have a small sewing machine. I don't recommend that you sew this on your Featherweight. And then make sure you keep your straps out of the seams. So I'm just going to clip them to the side there. So I'm going to go ahead and do this, and then I'll start I'll do the same thing towards the other side. Okay, so I finished one side and I pinned my other side. And I don't keep the zipper open when I'm clipping for when I'm gonna baste it, because if you open it, like when I open it, I have a tendency to stretch the zipper too much. So I don't want to do that. I want to baste it first, and then after that I'll finagle it to make it easier. So again, flat side down, and this is how you're going to start on your sewing machine. Just crumple everything up and start sewing. And the trick is, and move as you need to, and the trick is to make sure you go slow. before I start binding these raw edges, I'm going to turn it around right side out to make sure that everything is where it's supposed to be and everything looks good. The corners, make sure the zipper closes okay. And so far it's looking good. Last step is to bind the raw edges for the sides. I'm using this 1 inch wide, and then it has like a built-in crease in the middle, so it's easy to fold. You can do it on the shiny side or on the dull side. I'm gonna do it on the dull side just so that it blends in a little bit more. I'm gonna start from the very bottom. And basically I'm just gonna go ahead and clip it. And go all the way around. The elastic has a little bit of stretch, but you don't want to stretch the elastic. But the stretch helps it fold over the edges very nicely. So I'm going to clip it all the way around and then cut it here at the bottom and overlap it, and that way my whole seam will be bound. Okay, my binding is done. And now I'm just going to turn it around to the right side. And everything is looking good. And this will take shape once I leave it. And it's a nice soft bag. It's nice and light, so your featherweight is not is even less heavy. And I'm gonna put a magnetic snap here, but I ordered some snaps and I'm waiting, so I don't have it right now. You can do a sew-in snap. Not necessary, but I kind of like it. I don't put a regular snap because, you know, you don't want to be pushing. You just want to. And that's the finished product. And comparing this with the first one that I made, I like the foam better because it stands up better. And the fusible interfacing that I used, it kind of like bubbles. I don't know if you can see it on camera, but it's just not as nice as the foam. But it still works if you prefer to do it that way. And I've seen beautiful, beautiful bags that people have made from this pattern. It's it takes time, but it's not that hard really. So I would love to see what you guys make from this pattern. And thank you for watching.